Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-affleck.
And it's time for...
Mayday, Mayday, UnSpun.
Oh, a little bit concerned, George.
Can you believe it's May, though?
Yeah.
It's almost summer.
Are we going to make Jimmy Kimmel if we say that? You know? He always does the I can't believe it's May and I can't believe it's August. Can you believe it's September already? That's like a thing on Jimmy Kimmel. I love that dude. Hey, speaking of people we love, can I just say this? Big news in the radio world. You and I both fill in for her. The amazing, the incredible, the incomparable Linda Steele has resigned from CKNW because
shocker.
She wants to take care of her family matters, and you know, we have that in common with being the essential caregivers for our fathers. Respective fathers in long-term care. And, you know, and listening to her, I knew it was coming because I saw the internal email. You knew it was coming as well. But the announcement at 3:00 was really heartfelt when she said, you know, my job can wait, but my family can't. And it was just really touching. So Linda's going to be on the air until May 28th. And then we'll see what happens after that. But I just want to acknowledge the Queen. She was great. She was so amazing to work with. I've had the last 5 years with Linda. And man, I tell you what, she's exactly what you think. Outpouring
on Twitter for sure of thanks and gratitude to her. So good luck with that. And, you know, obviously her husband is the top cop in Surrey. So
busy.
It's a busy life they're going to lead, I think.
Yeah, he's the new chief of police, right? The new Surrey police chief is Linda's husband, Norm. And lots of crime to tackle there and all over Metro Vancouver right now.
It's intense. You know, I can't remember it being this bad since 2000s with the Joe Hall, Bindi Joe Hall, I think it was, and all those guys. There was drive-by happening. That was a Vancouver problem mostly, but it was out of control and people started getting worried that they were going to, we were all going to be shot on the street by accident. And that's kind of where it's getting. We saw that brazen, as the saying goes, in that two mall parking lots, or two malls in 1 week. And then, it's there's lots to be investigated for sure. But what is going on? What is going on?
And here's the thing, it was about 10 days ago. It feels like one big blur day because it's like we're not stressed out enough that now we're concerned. You can only sit on patios at restaurants and you're sitting with your household. That's your only real thing you can get out and do. And hearing a former gang squad cop basically saying, I'm not saying you'll get shot, but if you see a bunch of, big dudes with the look of gangster on them and they come and sit next to you, I'd leave. What?
That's crazy.
It is crazy. And this is outside the Toys R Us. This is outside the event center in Langley where kids are being dropped off for daycare. This is happening where people go and live. When they go, oh, don't worry, no risk to the public. It's a targeted shooting. It's like, yeah, but it was a targeted shooting in the parking lot of the busiest mall in Langley. Holy crap.
And we're hearing stories from the police that these gangs are recruiting kids as young as grade 5. And so simultaneously, we have these school districts, including Vancouver, getting rid of their school police liaison officers. And whether it's spin or not, the police are saying this is exactly why we should be staying in these schools. And, of course, it's a great little angle to take when this is happening. But I certainly, as a parent, whose kid will be going to an inner city school starting next year, it concerns me, and I don't understand the logic behind it. And I think that this recruitment is where you have to start from a policing side. I think that's what we're hearing, that there is an intentional process that these gangs are taking. This war is a result of this. It's obviously, when I was filling in for Linda and I spoke to an expert, and he was talking about the fact that it's weird to say this, but this is just not productive to general gang mentalities. That this kind of chaos is not conducive to quality gangness or something to that effect. It's like you're killing each other and you're creating chaos and you're drawing too much attention to yourself, to your criminal behavior.
Yeah.
That's not good gang.
No, you want to fly under the radar and make all the money off the proceeds of
Yeah.
crime. I like the way you like launched a little bit of a siren in behind you while you were talking
Yeah.
there. Well done. Well done.
Something happening on Broadway.
One of the things in the experts, again, in a fill-in, I think I was filling in for Jill Bennett when I spoke with somebody on that topic. And it was about how, where it was just a couple of gangs not long ago, there's been sort of this splintering where some members have said, you know what, I'm not going to work for you anymore. I'm going to go on my own, which is causing them to be like, okay, take out that guy and take out his girlfriend or his whatever, the mule that's doing the whatever. It's just like the chaos around it all is actually, from some people's perspective, a growth spurt in more gangs in Metro Vancouver, which is terrifying to think. But what can, the police are also at this perfect storm of defund, right? That whole movement of like police are bad, cops are bad, and the school liaison officers, which full disclosure, yet again, I'm going to say it every time I mention it, but I'm related to a former longtime school liaison officer who might be the kindest person I've ever met and has mentored many young people away from a life of possible crime or worse, having that resource in school, like really cool, special people take on those roles. You're not just sending in the jacked up mad cop, the one bad cop that makes the rest look bad or whatever the term is. Anyways, but it's like the defund that, and then the actual, cut to the budget. Right. And then
in general.
Yeah.
And then you've got the change of the police force in Surrey. They've got a hiring freeze at the RCMP in Surrey.
And then Jordan Bateman mentioned in the bcpoli hot stove, I think he made a really good point. On top of all of that, by the way, we're going to pull police resources and make roadblocks to stop people from traveling. Like
and also the drug trade. There's less drugs to sell because of marijuana legalization. So there's they have a smaller pie of drug dealing to do. So they're fighting over less product that they would sell illegally. And so it's a good argument, a potential argument from a national point of view about legalization or
decriminalization.
Decriminalization of drugs because, and we're seeing the mushroom, that movement, the magic mushroom movement happening in the same way that marijuana movement happened. Psilocybin, the fancy word. Yeah. But hey,
microdosing.
It was magic mushrooms.
You dig for them in the yard.
We knew where to pick them. We knew where to get them.
The turf farm. Go where the cows were.
Exactly. Many a brownie had in high school in Langley when I grew up.
I was such a chicken, man. I'm not a prude. There was a lot going around me, but it just scared me just a little bit. I like the idea though of learning more about the benefits to psilocybin, what is being tested and studied now, and microdosing, and maybe replacing some of the drugs that are so addictive or have so many ill effects that are prescribed. I mean, they're prescription medications that have almost worse side effects than they do benefits, but are the only option for some people that deal with severe anxiety or depression, where the psilocybin might actually really help. So, I mean, if we start
and addiction therapy too, apparently they're very effective. There's lots of studies that they're trying to. It's tough for these drugs, especially when they're illegal drugs, to do proper laboratory studies because they're not legal. So in America, we don't have any information because it's not legal. There's no real marijuana, cannabis scientific information about how successful it can be. And so everything is based on hearsay. We've talked about this before. And there are, websites where you can go and they talk about this kind of strain or that kind of strain, but it's not officially scientific. So hopefully as marijuana gets legalized and other drugs, which are organic, these are things that grow naturally. They're not some chemical base as far as they're not, made in a lab, that we can find solutions to this. I mean, I think that there's that connection to the earth and all that stuff that we need to think about more in how we take care of ourselves without throwing out, we'll talk more about, about COVID at the end, but you also want to make sure that you have a proper
you want to keep your vitamin D, but you also want to get that vaccine. We will talk about COVID in a sec. But while talking about crime, last week, George, as we were speaking, there was the deadline coming to pass for the encampment, the decampment of Strathcona. How did you hear that all went down? I mean, there was some controversy there
Yeah,
after
it
the
went pretty
fact. Yeah.
well. Pretty
Yeah.
well. There's still, it's a big mess and it's going to take months. I mean, Oppenheimer with the previous location, previous, because they had a quick stop at the port, is still not open because of the time it takes to restore the grass and all that stuff. So they have said the Oppenheimer or that Strathcona, they'll have the baseball diamonds open pretty quick, but the rest of the grassy area will take some time to come back. So, it's great, but, and they've housed 200 plus people. There's all that controversy though about people feeling they're jumping the queue, if you just set up a tent, you get to put on a priority list. And there still are tents in the city, of course. You said they popped up on Union Street now.
Yeah.
At a little funny meridian there. If you've been in Vancouver on Union Street, there have always been tents there, actually, for as long as I can remember. There's always been a few tents right on the sort of, when you head up the viaduct, there's this little space there that people seem to like to put their tents. But that seems to be growing again. And,
as does the parking lot, apparently, near Strathcona. There were a couple of residents saying, we still have the issue of a lineup. And frankly, depending on where you go around the city, you can see a lot of people living in their vehicles. And
the trailers and cars. It's a real problem. I mean, we've talked about this before. This is not something that's going to be solved simply by housing people. That we know, of course, housing is crucial, and affordable housing and social housing. But this is an issue of equalization of incomes and looking at the welfare state in general that we need to look at nationally and provincially. And there's no quick fix, but there's multiple aspects to fixing this problem, and it takes commitment from every level of government. And it doesn't mean just writing strongly worded letters to other levels of government. It means getting shit done.
Yeah, there's a bit of shade to be thrown there, because if I hear one more study, one more report that needs to be generated, or the re-announcement of funds being allocated without breaking ground on anything, it's just, the urgent need exposed by COVID-19 cannot be ignored. And hopefully we're, in the last summer of this being to the level of health emergency that we're seeing, but the true affordability crisis and the homeless issue and the opioid crisis that we're living in right now cannot be just shuffled to a new file and wait for the headlines to re-up once every so often. It's time to actually address the root issue. Again, you say it, we talk about it almost weekly, George, and it is newsworthy and relevant almost weekly, if not more so. Let's talk about another one you're going to have to talk me through this one, because I saw this tweet roll by, and the only way I'm responding now to Park Board re-upping.
Why do I know where this is going?
We're shutting down a lane in Stanley Park because that's what the people want. You know what? I saw a tweet about the concrete barriers that are now going in there, and I just responded with October 15th, 2022. That's it.
Which is my birthday. So that's great.
Yeah. Just reminding everybody that your
my 29th
birthday,
by the way.
Yes.
Remind everybody on my birthday. Oh, and go vote. Yes, that too.
The municipal election. Know who you're voting
500 people that are running for office in 2022.
That's
going to 24 different mayoral candidates that will be running. The election day. But the standing. So they're moving ahead with some parts of it that are going to permanent separation. The good news is that for the summer, they've said that bikes can now continue to ride on the seawall. Because for me, with my kid who hates riding up a hill, I know he's not super athletic. I apologize to all of you, people who could criticize kids who don't like riding up cliffs on their bicycles. But hey, he does love riding his bike. Yeah. He just doesn't want to ride up a steep hill. And so the park board took that away from us last summer. We did not do one. We usually go around the seawall on several occasions for the summer because we live downtown and it's like our route. And this last year we didn't do it once because we did it once, and we had to walk our bikes. That took
that big
half an hour walk.
That hairpin. Yeah, no, it's way longer than
going down
think.
Is super fun, but it's
but that's the other way.
So there is a process though, Jody, there's a lawsuit happening with the restaurants. There's two restaurants that are working together on because they were cut off their parking.
Right, Prospect Point and the Tea House, right? Yeah.
That's right. So, but in the report, it talks about a specific process related to that area that they will be dealing with and having a public process to come, and
consultation,
input from the affected or people and companies and yada yada. So
does that have anything? Do you think, George? Does that have anything to do with the lawsuit that they?
Well, I hope not. I hope that they should be thinking about consultation. I mean, that's required. I just think that sometimes the park board's in over its head on this. I think that they don't tap into the experience at City Hall the way they should.
Right.
The connection between how, we have a massive transportation department at City Hall in Vancouver. And I don't know if they're communicating the way they should be. Guess what? The City of Vancouver builds a lot of bike lanes. There's currently one being built right in front of my house on Richard Street, and it's a two-way bike lane. But there's been very little opposition to it because we went through a massive process. It was part of the transportation plan, and having a good, robust, overall big vision, big ideas. Here's what we want the world to look like in the future, but then focusing it down into specific, micro processes that can be done quickly, so that the neighbors and the businesses and whoever feels like they've been engaged with. And not everybody's going to be happy, but in this case, it looks like the park board will have a specific engagement strategy for the troubled areas. Whether they come to a happy conclusion, only time will tell.
Only time will tell. Interesting piece of that I'd like to just sort of punctuate with is my one big hope in this temporary bike lane shutdown of a lane in Stanley Park, restricting access to some areas. Please don't just replace and maintain the disabled parking spots that were there before, but add to them. Mm-hmm. Add to them. If you're going to restrict how people can move about the park because of these bike lanes, let's create spaces for people of all abilities, people who don't have the option to ride a bike, nor walk, nor hop on, hop off transit. We need this park to be available to all. And that is the most important, because people are like, Absolutely. You hate cyclists. I'm like, no, I don't. I just want everybody to be able to enjoy Stanley Park. And that was not the case last year. That was not the case.
100%. So. And we have a significantly aging population. We have like a lot of older people, and I'm heading there, we're getting up there. And, I won't always be mobile.
Us.
We as in we old.
I know. But you're right. Temporarily able-bodied.
Guess what? We all get old.
That's what, when I interviewed somebody who is a consultant, a big mucky muck with the Rick Hansen Foundation. He's awesome. And he looked at me and he introduced me to the term tab. Everybody's a tab. Temporarily able-bodied. Everybody is temporarily able-bodied. At some point in your life, you're going to be suffering from some disability, period. It's going to happen. So.
My sister, who's a couple years older than me, last week in her kitchen, she's a very active person, very, very energetic, doesn't stop moving, in her kitchen, slipped on the dustpan, fell, smashed her knee to smithereens. She is now laid up for 6 months minimum. For somebody who never stops moving, this is a real problem, and a huge pain. But she's now, for the temporary time, she will have her little thing on her car that she gets to park in a special spot. Yeah. And you would never have assumed that 2 weeks ago, but here she is. Now she's going to need, she has to be in a wheelchair and all these things. It's brutal.
You never know what might happen. Yeah. I'm with you.
So we have to respect all people who want to use our parks. They're for everyone.
Yes. October 15th, 2022. Make note of who's voting for the. Note of the people who are voting against what's best for this city, for Vancouver, this park in particular. And I'm not even telling anybody how to vote. If you don't like it one way or the other, make note. Because that's the thing that's missing, George. When we all head to the polls on October 15th on 2022, and there's like this massive long list of names, it's very difficult for average Joe citizens to know who to choose. I went by bios last time around, and many of those bios were misleading. And I'm talking very misleading. I voted for some of the people that are making decisions that are absolutely making my mind numb with anger. So
that is interesting. Talk about spin. I mean, the ultimate spin. You're actually, your bio when you're running for office is misleading or not even accurate. How can that be legal? How can that
Good
be?
question.
How can there not be checks and balances for that? I mean, my bio when I ran was pretty, it is what it was. It was my history. And people are quite often, people said, "Oh, I voted because I read your bio and I thought it was one of the better bios." I'm in communications. It's one of the things
You do it
I know how to
well.
write a good
No,
bio, but I didn't.
I voted for
it
people
was
that
what
I
it
thought
was.
would consult. I thought I voted
Right.
for people that wanted everything to be transparent and be truly democratic. Nobody's single agenda, but a greater good. I was wrong. I won't be wrong next time. I'm going to work really hard to make sure that I'm not. Let's talk more about city council. There's some house cleaning going on there. And the city plan, we got to talk about that a little bit because that's what your next column is. But before we get there, let's talk about your bio, because at one point you were very much involved with the P&E. What do you think about another year without the P&E? Can it survive?
So just for transparency, my agency, Laura Balance and I used to be business partners, and we split his company in 2008. So I worked with her on the marketing and PR for the P&E for 10 years. And then I was in council, and so I have familiar, knowledge of the P&E. I think the best thing about the P&E, and it's owned by the city. It's a city's entity. It's not a park board entity, and so it is. And generally, it's built to be self-sustaining. So it's kind of like a crown corporation, if you describe it. It was gifted to the city by the province in the early 2000s, and it was our job. And so all the maintenance, all that stuff happens within the site, by the site, for the site. All the money that they bring in pays to keep that place operating.
Right.
Potentially any new capital that comes in, they do have a process right now to rebuild some stuff that comes from the city if they want to invest. So without the fair, which is their biggest moneymaker, they make money on the venues and all that stuff, whatever those might be, which of course is concerts, which haven't been happening as well. There's been some filming on the site, which has been helpful. But the P&E is a multi-million-dollar moneymaker. And without it, and a huge, as we've heard, we know it's a job creator. It has huge job creation. So they're talking about an $8 million loss this year and a $15 million loss next year. This is a real problem because it's a loss for the corporation. It's its own entity, which means it'll affect its capability to, even have a bank account. I mean, the city will
keep the lights on. They got to keep the lights on, or it falls apart, right?
Yeah. So the city itself needs to find a way to fund it, which, hey, the city has a $1.3 billion budget. So can you find $8 million, guys? No, but they're asking for the province for money or somebody else for money. I'm not sure. They've
the federal government. I know this. The federal government has given subsidies, has subsidized the Calgary Stampede and the Canadian National Exhibition, the CNE in Ontario, which are almost identical to the P&E. If you walked through the Midway at any of those events, they'd feel exactly the same. They're set up, as you just explained, very differently. Therefore, the millions of dollars that have been given to those other anchor provincial events has not been seen by the P&E. Now, in the most recent budget here in the province, there is an allotted amount of money for anchor attractions in British Columbia to be funded. And the P&E has not learned as to whether or not they might be eligible under that umbrella, because it is going to the likes of Butchart Gardens and the places that are, the established anchor attractions in the province. And again, it falls under that.
That don't have an overlord or whatever you call the city who has $1 billion budgets.
Right.
It's hard for, as much as I love the P&E and I respect the management there. It's I can see how it's hard for Horgan and hard for the Prime Minister to look at that and go, you guys got $1 billion budget, and things aren't as bad as we thought they would be for you, as Vancouver's finding out. I mean, the development's happening. It seems, there's a brief moment there, that 3 months or where everybody panicked, but now it's like hotter than ever right now in the city, across the region. One thing is that it's a regional event, the fair. So, I mean, I think there's a creative way to do that, but they're in a bit of a challenge. And I think though, I believe that, my feeling is that the city council itself, and maybe they're having right now as we speak, there's an in-camera meeting. I don't know what it's about, but my guess is it might be about the P&E, but it might be about something else. But they need to make a decision. They need to say, we got to find $8 million for these guys. How do we do that? There's a way. The city has borrowing capacity. They can borrow money. They can loan it to the corporation of the P&E, and that can be paid back over the next 30 years, whatever. There's a way to solve it within the city. And I think the province knows that. I think they're pushing back a little on the city, saying, come on, you guys, you have a $1.3 billion budget. You can't find $15 million.
So are we looking at the mayor here and saying, do something? Is that what
The
this?
council, the mayor and the council. I mean,
council.
It represents about, if it's revenue, the cash, then it represents each $7 million is 1% in property tax. So you have to ask Vancouverites when budget comes this fall, the first iteration of the budget, say, Vancouver, we need to add 1%. And this is how I think budgeting should be done. Here's what we need to do. We need 1% more taxes to save the P&E. And we're going to promise you that $7 million
is going to go there.
Was going to go, and we're going to show you that transparency.
On the line items.
On the line items.
The budget.
Here's the $7 million that you paid us, and here's where it went, and here's what you got. And I think taxpayers in Vancouver will be, okay, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the
I'd
kind of
rather pay
decision
for
that the
than
province
a separated bike lane. Oh, don't even. Sorry. I would,
and that's expensive.
The expensive pylons and now the expensive concrete. Yeah.
That's expensive.
Miles of it. We only got like 4 minutes to go here. So I want to get to all of the other topics that we've sort of lined up, including, I think most important that we specifically pick your brain on is the city plan that's going on, the NIMBYism, the bubbling up of, what do you mean you're putting a tall building at the corner of Arbutus and Broadway? Well, it's the Broadway subway line. It's so into it. Well, that wasn't the zone. We're rezoning. We're pre-zoning. We're post-zoning. What needs to actually happen here, short form?
I think, the Broadway plan is its own thing, and it's happening, and it's coming to council over the next, you're already hearing people complaining about it. So it's coming soon.
Yeah.
And it's really focused on the station development and height and density along the Broadway line, the whole strip from Main Street all the way down to Arbutus. And for those people who are not from Vancouver, I apologize for this very specific. We've been, we talked about trying to be more broad for a lot of our province-wide listeners. But anyway, so that thing's happening, and that's going to be controversial, but it's a kind of a community plan. City plan or Vancouver plan is the city as whole, and I've always argued it's too much. It's too complex. You can't you can't do it. It's going to cost so much money. And by the time you actually submit it, if you get it done before the end of this council, and if you do, it's probably going to be watered down anyways. It's too much. And it's not even, you're asking for too much. My belief has always been, have an overall big picture. Like there is a transportation plan. It's called the 2040 transportation plan. There was a 2020 transportation plan done in like 2000. We approved the 2040 transportation plan. It took about a year and a half for staff to do the work, come to us and present it. It got passed unanimously. It included bike lanes. Oh my God, I voted for bike lanes. Oh wow, how dare I, to those people who think I hate bike lanes.
I know, you and me both, right?
Yeah, it's because I looked at it. Okay, here's the rough plan. Here's some ideas.
Yeah.
But don't worry, we're going to come back for each of these things. This is going to happen.
Right.
This is what we think will be best. Here are some areas where we think there's going to be some challenges. The city plan should do the same. It should say, we know we need density. Of course, we have 5,000 people moving here every year, minimum. We need density at the stations. How roughly we think it should be like this. But you need to have ongoing local area community plans happening all the time. There's not one happening at all besides Broadway. In my time, we did 3 in one term. We did 6 in my 7 years there. Yeah. We're not doing enough of those local area plans, and they need to be consistent and constant and always evolving, because that's the city. It is.
So we're going to punctuate because we're going to come back on that because there's, like you said, there's NIMBYism going off on all points of that. So we'll circle back to it. I do want the one COVID-19 thing that I'd like to get to, which is big news this week, which impacts both of our families, is the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine being approved for kids 12 and up. This is great. My sources and those of my colleagues are saying that it is highly likely that our kids will actually be vaccinated in their schools before the end of the school year. That it'll be that easy for kids. Yeah, because the vaccine programs within schools are very, very well-oiled machines. Like this is how it should work, which is just great. What isn't a well-oiled machine? Once again, yes, I'm going to throw shade at the park board. That's my column this week. Are you kidding me? We're still talking about whether or not it's legal to have a beer or a glass of wine with your meal at the beach. I saw
park board ticketing people last week. Down by Science World.
Were they hooligans? Were they thrashing the place?
No, they were having a nice little picnic. I know. Brutal.
Are you kidding me, George? Like I sat there at Spanish Banks. I was sitting at Spanish Banks, beautiful last summer, trying to be grabbing a moment of warmth and sitting there. Of course, we had our Starbucks cup with our Strongbows in it. Duh. But the people sitting next to us with the little kids, that had, 4 beer on a thing in their cooler. They weren't even drinking a beer at the time. And the 4-wheeler cops came up, said, open your cooler. They did. They held up the 4 beer, said, you either pour those out right now or leave.
God's
and they
sakes.
got up and left. It was a lovely young couple that they were going to get a $240 fine for saying they're causing absolutely no problem. 2 logs over are the 4 teenagers sitting there puffing joints, which you're not supposed to be smoking at the beach. But, come on. And I'm not even saying ticket the kids that are smoking the pot at the beach either. Like,
they should, because it's more obnoxious for sure.
Move along. Ticket the hooligans. That's all. No, the Orca.ca is where you'll find my column, and George is just polishing his column as well, and you will find that at...
Well, Vancouver is awesome.
Thank you.
And George, I'll post it on my Twitter, George _ Affleck.
George _ Affleck. And fun fact, a little note, George will be filling in for Mike Smith on CKNW all next week, if you're tuned in as of the 6th of May, Holy May. So we'll be tuned in for that as well.
Yes, it's going to be an experience, and
you're going to do great.
We'll see you around. We'll probably see you there.
Bye, George.
See ya.